Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I am here with David Thompson to hang out because there is nothing better to do right now. How are you doing, David?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Honestly, I'm doing better than I really should be doing. I mean, I'm a solo gamer. I'm never bored.
That's right.
Ever.
Yeah. Life's good right now, right?
Oh man, if it weren't these circumstances and this was just life, it'd be great.
Yep, that's right.
And you are, I take it, working remotely right now?
Yep, I've gone to telework for 4 days a week. So I'll go to work one day basically just to make sure, things are still running. But that's it.
Nice. Yes, I'm in the process of attempting to teach lots of teenagers over the internet.
Yeah. Well, telework is interesting for me too because, I think I mentioned to you, everything I do at work is classified, right? So teleworking from home is a bit of a challenge. So we'll see. It's basically how much unclassed training can I possibly do right now?
Right. But you are double dipping, sir, because some of that training that you're doing also applies to board games, which is what we all really care about. Am I right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, we were talking about what am I doing while I'm at home. And once I get past all the obligatory bad training I don't want to do, one of the things I'm doing is a lot of ArcGIS online. So if people don't know what that is, essentially my day job, I do a lot of remote sensing and geospatial analysis type work. So looking at geospatial data, old school like cartographic kind of stuff. But what I'm really interested in is applying some of that to a game that I'm going to be working on in about a year and a half from now, right? So this is a game, World War II game, Battle of Mortain, where the U.S. and Germans fought in France, right? So it's a battle I've been really interested in. It's going to be part of the same series of games as Pavlov's House and Castle Itter. So it's all about a U.S., basically about a battalion worth of guys holding out on a hill against German attack for a few days.
A few days?
A few days. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so the U.S. moved into Mortain, the little town of Mortain in France, and the Germans were launching a massive counterattack. And so they had to go through Mortain, and they needed to take this hill. And the U.S. 30th Infantry Division had just moved in, and there was, like I said, about a battalion's worth of guys on the hill, and they wind up having to defend that hill, basically being cut off for the better part of almost a week. So it's about them holding that hill, and then the sort of, like in Pavlov's House, you have this sort of strategic or operational support. So they do have some support, but very, very little. They're mostly cut off.
Where do you find out about these battles? I love that you have managed to make an entire series out of these extremely dramatic fighting and defense scenarios. So is it just that you read so much about World War II that something catches your interest? Or how do you look for these?
Yeah, so I guess you could say like, hey, what are some famous last stands in World War II or something? And maybe you hit on some of them. But it's usually like I'm just reading through something and it'll catch my eye. I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. This one specifically, though, so I was kind of predisposed to this one because it's the same unit that I based Undaunted on.
Oh.
And there's actually a couple of Undaunted scenarios about this same battle. So, but now we're taking it to, a full game about this. So
that is awesome. Undaunted was great, so I'm excited to see more with that unit. And so I'm curious about how ArcGIS is going to play into this. So I actually started a little bit of ArcGIS training when I was in grad school because I used to do archaeological survey work. So I worked the total station and I took little points of like where walls were and where important points were on the site. And I was planning to learn how to use ArcGIS so that I could store information about what we'd found and I could make really cool maps. And so I'm actually kind of jealous that you're going to get to do all of this training because it was something that I kind of left behind when I left academia. Yep. That is so awesome. So what are you hoping that ArcGIS is going to add to the experience of your game?
Yeah, so if you think about it, if you open up a history book or whatever and you're looking at a battle, usually you'll get one or two maps, right, of unit disposition. And you can try to infer a lot from that. But usually it's it's always a static map, right? And it's hard to understand, like, okay, I get that this unit was in this position. But if the battle took 7 days and all these units are moving around, I don't really understand what's going on. So the intent here is that I will take all the different sources I have. So on my floor, I have 14 books about the Battle of Mortain, right? So I'm going to take all of those sources, and what I'll do is I'll create what we call structured data. So it'll be, if you can imagine an Excel spreadsheet, right? Every single row of data will be this unit, its echelon, its whatever designator, all of this columns and columns of data about a specific unit, a specific time, and a specific place. And so all of that will be structured data that I will visualize in Arc, and it will have so it'll have all the unit information, like what type of unit it was, its designator, all that kind of stuff. But the two most important attributes will be the time and the place, right? So the time, but because ultimately what I want to have is a spatiotemporal map. So you can imagine like a time-lapse viewer of the Battle of Mortain, where we can track, hey, I want to track, this specific squad or platoon. Where did they go? And we could track it down to that level.
That sounds really like you, and I mean that in a great way. So you just had a successful Kickstarter campaign for By Stealth and Sea, and I remember talking to you about being concerned about which ships were in port at which times so that your game would be as historically accurate as possible. And I also know that you've done a great job of tracking down images of people who are involved in the battles that you've made games about. So honestly, this just seems true to form for me.
There's no detail too small. That's right.
I really like that. So do you feel that this is important because it enhances the experience of the game, or is it because for you, designing the game and learning about the history are so closely tied that it's just part of the fun of it for you?
Yeah, I think that for sure, right? Like I get a lot out of, I'm going to research the topic. And in this case, I have two goals. One goal is, and this is the smaller goal in this case, is that it will inform the game, right? So that'll be cool. There'll be things in the game that people will probably never really know that will be that will harken back to this research I'm doing. I do, in this case, have another goal that's not tied to the game itself, and I'm hoping to come out of this with, I'll publish something. I don't know what the journal or something, where I say, hey, if you're studying historical battles and you want to be able to track units like this is the methodology we used, right? So I'm working with a couple of data scientists and analytic methodologists to bring all of our sort of resources together against this, and hopefully at the end of it we'll say, hey, if you want to do something similar, this is how you go about doing it. And I have never looked into that on the unclass, like the normal world, like what that would even mean. And so that'll be a whole new experience. But hopefully we can come out of that, help others do the kind of, and in a perfect world, other people would take that methodology. We would see more battles where we could dig deeper, right?
So I really wonder if there are archaeologists looking at stuff like this already. Like I'm trying to decide. I'm trying to figure out if I know a guy. Because this sounds like exactly the sort of thing that, a practicing historian or archaeologist would be really, really, really into. And also, this sounds like something that'd be fun for you because, you already like to publish guides that go with your games. Yeah. So there was a guidebook for Pavlos House. Did you publish one for Iter, or because that book was out?
Yep.
You did? Okay. Yeah. And then I know there will be one for By Stealth and Sea, because that is some interesting historical information. So that's awesome. I really like it when games meet actual historical practice and talking about something that's more than just a game. So that is super exciting. So what are you playing right now in the middle of all of our free time?
I was just talking to Harold about this. So right before all the current insanity hit, I had gone down to Nashville to Tennessee Game Days, which is an awesome convention. It's pretty, like maybe 1,500 people. I don't know. But it's awesome. That's where when I used to live in Huntsville, Alabama, that's where me and my buddies would go to. That's where the big local convention. So I get to meet back up with them, and they're not war gamers, so we were playing a bunch of Euros. So that was cool. I played Terraforming Mars for the first time.
How did you like it?
I'd never played before. It was good. I liked it more than I thought I would, right? So it was good. I got to play Orleans, which I love.
I really like Orleans. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. Of Robinson Crusoe, which is unbelievably fantastic, right?
Yes. Did you live?
Oh, no, God, no.
Of course not.
No way. And Fox and the Forest Duet, which is cool.
You know what? I bought that to try to play it with my boyfriend. Will we like it?
I mean, does he like trick-taking games?
Yeah.
Have you guys played regular Fox and the Forest?
No, we have not. We've played things like Diamonds and Hearts and all that stuff. Yeah. So I figured it would be fun to trick-take cooperatively.
I think it was definitely the best surprise for me, right? It was awesome. I loved it. I think you guys would like it. Yeah. It was super hard, super fun. It was good. Great teamwork. So, yeah, I think you'll dig it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, normally I want to play, 6-hour games that no one else wants to play. At least not in my immediate vicinity.
Yeah. Now, since I've been home, all I've done is play with... Well, I've done some testing, right? Tabletop Simulator, obviously, what I normally do. But I've been playing with the kids, so we've been playing Crusoe Crew. Do you know that?
Yeah, that's a Van Ryder, one of those game books.
Yep. So that's awesome. And then we've been playing Adventure Games The Dungeon.
How's that?
It's awesome. It's really good. Yeah, the kids are loving it.
That sounds great, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm an Omni gamer, so I'll try the full range. So that's cool. So I was thinking about something that you said, which is that you were thinking about working on this game a year and a half out. How scheduled is your design process?
Yeah, so I can tell you this. Right now, my schedule for the next couple of years is set. Right, it's up until 2023-ish.
Wow.
Yeah, just because now part of that is because so many games that I'm working on have expansions or sequels, right? So Undaunted is scheduled through the next couple of years. War Chest, all the stuff I'm doing with DVG, those are all planned out.
Yeah.
And I can only do so much, unfortunately, because I have a day job, right?
What are those?
So that's the problem, right? I unfortunately have had to turn down a couple of people asking about doing games for them because of that. So it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know that this summer I'll be finishing up Soldiers and Postmen's uniforms, which means that next year, I know. So next year, the next DVG game will be Battle of Mortain.
Awesome. Okay, so it's going to be Soldiers, Postmen's uniforms, and then Battle of Mortain, and then there's going to be more War Chest.
That's been announced. There's another War Chest expansion on the way. I don't think they've announced the name though, so I have to be very careful.
Oh, you can't give me the inside scoop. How much of your gaming schedule is classified? How much of it can I wring out of you?
I can tell you this. There have been a lot of people who have posted on Board Game Geek with their own fan-made ideas, and there have been a ton of people who have come up with ideas that are very similar in theme to an expansion we have coming up.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So did you design it before you looked at the fan stuff, or in response to the fan stuff?
Yeah. So here's what's funny. This is, people. I don't know if people get this or not, but the War Chest expansions, the one that came out Nobility, and the next one, those were designed a year and a half ago, right? And so people will email me all the time, and they'll say, "Hey, I want to test your next expansion for War Chest." I'm like, "The next expansion for War Chest has been done for a year." So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to sync up with people that are interested in playtesting a game like that. A series is already. It's like Undaunted, right? So North Africa comes out in June, but we finished North Africa before the first Undaunted Normandy even came out.
Oh wow! Oh wow!
No.
Is there going to be more beyond North Africa, or do you not know yet? Or do you have that finished too?
Yeah. So there will be more, right? So I keep telling you, as long as people buy it, there will be more. So we are currently finishing up what comes after on North Africa. That's what I was testing last night, as a matter of fact. So
how do you keep all of this stuff so organized? I feel like you've got a lot of irons in the fire, and I'm not complaining because...
Yeah. So one thing is my design partner for War Chest and Undaunted, Trevor Benjamin, he and I are best buds in the world, super close friends. So it's awesome to just get together and play with him. we keep each other straight when it comes to those games. And we have another game in the works that I can't talk about.
Come on,
I can tell you that it's with Blacklist because we've openly talked about that. So you know Adam and Brady Sadler.
I
right?
do. You're in good company. Yeah.
I know. So it's been super fun to work with them. So I don't think I can. I'd probably get in trouble if I talk more about it, but it's with them.
I'm worth all the trouble. No, I'm kidding.
So it's good because when we're working together, obviously we keep each other in line.
Yeah.
And I will always have like a solitaire game that's my primary. So now the Best by Stealth and Sea is done. Yeah. I'll move on to Soldiers and Postman's Uniform.
Right.
And then maybe there'll be like one other project. So like Sniper Elite now is done, right?
Right.
So there's always kind of like one thing I'm doing with Trevor, one or two will usually be going back and forth.
Yeah.
One solitaire and then maybe one other project.
That's awesome. So what are you reading right now historically that may be the inspiration for your next installment?
Well, so it's all more like if I'm looking around, I see a lot of Mortain stuff. I see a lot of North Africa. Mm-hmm. Because I've been doing a lot of stuff related to Undaunted North Africa.
Right.
That's it. So it's all Mortain right now.
Got it. Well, I'm wondering if we might be seeing a solo game set in North Africa down the line.
Ooh, wow, that would be interesting. I think so. Here's what's going to be after Battle of Mortain. Mm-hmm. So that's one that I've been thinking about for a couple of years, and so I've got to get it. I know when I can't stop thinking about a game, I've got to make that game. Right. So that game needs to be. I think at that point I will have the opportunity to say, okay, now what do I do? We're just talking Valiant Defense, right?
Yeah.
I would say that right now it's down to one of three things, and this is a combination of things I want to do and what people keep asking for. Mm-hmm. So what people keep asking for is a lot of people want me to do the Alamo, right?
Oh, that'd be great. I'm a San Antonio native.
Okay.
I would not complain. I've been on the 3rd grade field trip to the Alamo and the 4th grade field trip to the Alamo.
My only experience with San Antonio is basic training, right? When I was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was in basic training for 6 weeks. Like I have no experience in San Antonio.
Well,
so
I highly recommend you visit. It is a wonderful town. Once travel opens up again, go have the best Tex-Mex you're ever going to have in your life.
Yeah,
I actually really love my hometown. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So what are some other requests that you're getting?
So that would be that's probably been the top one. Now there are people have asked for like Rorke's Drift and stuff, but my problem is, I mean, there is a States of Siege Alamo game, right?
Is there?
I think there is. I kind of don't think like I know that Valiant Defense is different than States of Siege, but they're close enough,
right? At
least like superficially that. I don't know about doing a game on the same topic. So we'll see. Siege of Jodetville. Do you know that?
No.
So there's an awesome Netflix movie by that name.
You know what? We've talked about this, but continue.
Yep. So that would be another one, and that's one I really want to do. That's the Irish guys that were in Africa. Right. That's what I want to personally do. I haven't had a couple of people have mentioned it. And then Free State of Jones, right? So like So those would be the two I would want to do. People have most asked for Alamo. None of those are World War II. So regardless of which we go with, it would be the first non-World War II Valiant Defense.
Right. Well, as much as I personally love the Alamo, I guess what I would tell you, your unsolicited advice, is that you should do what you want to do because your creativity and your interest in the research is what makes your games pop. So if you don't want to do that research, then don't. Keep making what you're making because it always turns out so interesting, and I think it turns out as interesting as it does because it's something that captured your attention. I mean, I would never have imagined that there'd be a game coming out about Italian torpedo riders. I didn't even know what that was until By Stealth and Sea. So, I mean, to me that's really cool. So I take it that By Stealth and Sea is not it can't be part of the Valiant Defense series. Are you going to also make a Valiant Offense series?
I know, right? So here's the thing. So a lot of people have asked for. I was talking to Harold about this when we were chatting the other day. One of the funny things about By Stealth and Sea is that when you go into Kickstarter and you look at the community that backed it, like the number one place was the U.S. by far. Mm-hmm. But the number two place was Italy, which is cool because there's probably not many war game Kickstarters where the number two place that backing it are Italy.
That's
so that's
really cool,
and I'm really proud of that, right? Like I think that's awesome. And I was super active. There's an Italian war game Facebook group that I was, they were super into it, and that's really cool. The funny thing about that, though, and I told Harold this story too, like my next door neighbor when I lived in England, he was into war games, and I didn't know that when I moved next door. Like he actually backed Pavlov's house without us having ever met, which isn't that bizarre? Like it's totally crazy. So he actually backed Pavlov's house, and my wife was giving him a piece of mail, and somehow it came out that he was backing it, and I created it, and then we became buddies, and we played Normandy 44, and he was awesome. Right? But he would jokingly tell me when I was talking about By Stealth and Seas, like, oh, I'm pulling for the Royal Navy, right? Like he's like, and so that was a really long way of getting back to like, if I had made By Stealth and Sea, but it was about the British chariot operators who basically emulated the Italians, it would have probably been a lot more popular, right?
Yeah, probably. But it also wouldn't have that same stealth element, which is what attracted me.
Yeah. Right.
And also, while it is true that the Italians were on the wrong side of this war, in my opinion, definitely my opinion. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that they didn't innovate.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Or that you can't try to make a game that sees things from a different perspective, especially because of this specific subject matter. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important for people to know, because there's this stereotype, and I think we may have talked about this before, like the stereotype that's, oh, the Italians were poorly, trained and had all this type of stuff during World War II. And it's just, I mean, while that may be true in some cases, it's clearly not true in all cases, right? And so it's cool that this game can fight back against that stereotype. But there would be... There's a really, really long way of getting back to your question. I mean, it would be super, super easy to like follow up By Stealth and Sea with the Japanese that did similar, or the British that did similar, right? So I don't know, if people like it, that would be an awesome thing to follow up on, because I had a ton of fun, researching it and designing it.
Yeah, and you've also got some workable stealth mechanics in place that could be applied to other games. I like trying to sneak around. I mean, I get a huge kick out of the fact that I always get caught, or that, my torpedo fell off, or the ballast went out again. But, I think what I like the most about By Stealth and Sea is how much went wrong and how funny it was, because it was always the worst time.
I know. You'll be in the middle, I would be playing it and I'm like, man, this is going too easy. Like I would start to worry, like, oh, this mission's too easy. How am I going to balance this? And then everything falls apart in the next turn, right? Yeah. So
I think what I appreciate about it is that a lot of games you kind of want to min-max and you're playing like to win. One thing I really like about By Stealth and Sea is that you're comparing yourself with history, which doesn't always go well, especially in that first mission. But it's also just sort of an interesting reactive game where you're living the experience of doing it, as opposed to, I mean, you can make smarter and dumber plays for things, and you can work the actions available to you as intelligently as you can. There's a lot of thought that goes into playing, but at the same time, you're also living out a story. And for me, that was a very exciting way to play.
Yeah, I totally agree. And hopefully all of my Solitaire war games, the narrative comes out, right? Like that's the most important.
Yeah, well, that was definitely what got me going about Pavlov's house. So you were at home with the kids and you've been playing games with them. I must ask, since I recommended it to you, how's Animal Crossing going?
Oh, well, so I have not. So I hit with them. Like I watched them play it first, and I get like. So I was missing out on all of the world of Animal Crossing, right? Like I had no idea what people are talking about. But now I get that. What's his name? Tom Nook.
Yes.
He's bad. He's like a bad guy, right?
He's a very friendly, polite, helpful bad guy. Oh yeah.
Oh man. I did watch them go through like the beginning, the tutorial or whatever, right? The intro, and it got to where he charges you for everything, like for the very first time. He's that'll be 49,000 bells or whatever. And my daughter's like, what? I mean, it definitely resonated.
She got betrayed for the first time. Oh, that's so good.
And he gives you the phone. He gives you the phone. He's like, "Here's your phone. It's got all these great apps. Da-da-da. That'll be 49,000 bells or your miles." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is out of control."
She's learning about the real world.
Oh yeah, yep. They are eating it up. They're loving it. So
that's awesome. I mean, I review games. I like it when a recommendation I make hits home, right?
Yep.
Have you been?
I was thinking about it. They were playing tons of Animal Crossing, and I was playing Slay the Spire, which is that's my go-to.
How are you enjoying that? I have played it, and I put it down a while back, and I haven't picked it back up. Now that I have this time, I've been thinking about it. So
yeah, I think it's just it. For me, it's the same. I think I've got 12 hours played or something, and it's just perfect. Hey, I've got an hour by myself. I'm just gonna let's do a run. Let's see how far I can get. And I think it's brilliant because I don't play a lot of video games at all. Right? Very, very seldom. I think it's brilliant because it's basically a board game that can't be a board game.
Right.
Because there's so much, stuff being tracked. Mm-hmm. So it's in my opinion, it's basically the perfect game for me, the perfect video game for me.
So I have a question for you. I've only played it some. Is it ultimately satisfying? Does that make sense? Is there an end point, or are you just seeing how well you can do? Because one thing I was wondering about with it is, where is it going? Because I haven't really played far enough in to know more than just, I'm trying to beat this thing. Is there
have you beat a run?
Yeah, I beat a run.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think you beat the run, and then it's well, what can I do now? And I don't really care. It tracks points and stuff and unlocks. None of that really means anything to me. So I beat it with 2 different characters. And so I think for me, I'd want to beat it with all 4 probably. And then I would feel okay, I've gotten the full experience.
Right. That makes sense.
I will say, to me, as I'm playing it, because I love deck builders so much.
Oh, yeah.
I'm part of my enjoyment is just seeing the way in which they implement the different deck building concepts.
Yeah, I really like all those modifiers that, you really can't do in a board game. Yeah. I mean, Sentinels of the Multiverse, I think, is about the maximum of people's willingness to do your own mods in your head, and most people not even that. So, it was really cool to watch them push that deck building mechanic, but with things that only a video game can do. That I definitely liked. The other thing that I am trying to figure out is, did you just buy a bunch of cards early on and you weren't really sure of your overall strategy, and then you're like, oh crap, I'll do better with the next character, or is that just me?
Yeah, it's tough. I was just doing a run. I played yesterday, so I was just doing a run yesterday, and I think that was the first time ever when you get the 3 cards that you get to choose from. Yeah, I would actually sometimes just not take any of them. I would just start skipping it. I was like, I'm coming out with this with a 38 card deck. That's not good. You can't possibly. And I even, I was playing with the one she has different stances, right? She has a calm and I actually started getting rid of every single one of the cards that were one of the stances. I just got rid of. I was like, I'm never going to go into that stance, so I'm just going to get rid of them all.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Do you regret your decision?
Smart or not? I don't know, because you get that big benefit when you come out of a stance. You get a big one-time energy benefit,
right? And
so I think I'm sacrificing that, but I'm obsessed with blocking, right? I want to block, and every once in a while I'll do my big hits. So if I know I'm never going to come out of my blocking stance, then I'm just going to optimize for that stance.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't win the run, though, so maybe it was the wrong call.
But, I do like Slay the Spire in the sense that, so I have tons of board game apps, but I gotta tell you, I never play them. Yeah, I will play Slay the Spire, but I really never play board game apps.
Yeah.
It doesn't do it for me. I know that I should maybe try Tabletop Simulator, because especially right now, everyone's like, let's go on Tabletop Simulator, but I really struggle. Have you gotten to where you enjoy TTS because you spend so much time designing on it and it feels more natural for you? Should I push on, or should I just...
so let me give you. So keep in mind that 99.9% of the time I'm on TTS, it's only doing design stuff, right?
Right.
So I'm very seldom going there to play a game that's not a game that I'm designing at the time.
Right.
So when I'm doing design work, I don't even think about it. It's like a means to an end, and it's the only way I can do it.
Right.
But do you know War of Whispers?
No. Oh wait, I've seen that box.
So Shut Up and Sit Down did a review on it recently, which it then went instantly out of stock. Right, it's sold out, so you can't get it anywhere.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. So I can't complain because they sold out a print run of Undaunted for me when they did the
Fantastic.
review, which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really good. I mean, people equate it thematically to Game of Thrones, right? And it is, so it's a really good game. Like, it's a really innovative game. It's got a lot of really cool action selection stuff going on. So my buddies, we wanted to play it, and they live in Virginia, so we played it on TTS. It was okay, but learning a game, especially on TTS, is not the easiest thing. So I think if you knew a game really well and you jump on TTS and it's a really good implementation, it's okay.
Right.
Learning a game is challenging, and I think the most challenging bit of that is like trying to recreate your ability to, in person, you can see everything.
Yes.
Right? You can kind of absorb everything, you can track it, and it just makes it so much harder to know anything that anybody else is doing and the board state and what you're doing, in my opinion. It's just more challenging.
That makes sense. So, do you mind if I ask you about that Shut Up and Sit Down interview? I mean, review? Yeah. Okay, so what did you think of their criticism that it boiled things down to a battle between the United States and Germany, and that left other countries out?
Yeah. Do you know the podcast So Very Wrong About Games? Have you ever listened to those guys?
I've heard of that podcast and maybe listened to a snippet. I'm terrible. Hey, I have all this time. Maybe I should catch up on my podcast.
So they're a couple of Canadian guys, and they have a podcast. It's really good. They've got a lot of really good critical thoughts on games. So I like their podcast. Yeah. They reviewed Undaunted, and they said the same thing. They were like, hey, we like the game. We wish it was a different theme because everybody does, U.S. versus Germany. Now, So I have a very personal response to that, and then I have like a objective view, trying to be objective. So my personal response is, there's a reason why the game has that theme, and it's because it follows my grandfather's unit.
Yes.
Right? So of course it was always going to be that, because it couldn't be anything but that. Now, if we remove me from that, so here's the unfortunate thing. We're so wrong about it.
So very wrong about games, yeah.
Yeah, and Shut Up and Sit Down. Neither of them knew that, right? So they can't have possibly known that. So if you discount that fact, that it was personally based, I mean, they're objectively correct.
Right.
That is the most common thing, right? The counterpoint is, we live in a world in which, like, English-speaking Western world people design games that we play for the most part. Mm-hmm. Many of those people are sensibilities. Like, we've been formed from our experiences, which are mostly Western Europe theater, World War II.
Right.
So it kind of makes sense that that's where you're going to draw your experiences from, and that's where most of the games are going to be played. And even if you want to be like cynical about it, like, it's going to be the best selling thing. So even if you didn't care about anything else, it's going to sell the most. So the publisher has a vested interest in making it that. So, I mean, they were wrong from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
It is an objective fact that numbers-wise it is true, and I think it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, the other bit of that is, I've also made Pavlov's House, Castle Itter, by Stealth. So it's like, it's unfortunate that they didn't say, this one game was in Western Europe, but every other game is about a much more, niche topic. So,
yeah, it's true. And, By Stealth and Sea was a risk, as we discussed. And I think it was a risk worth taking. I really enjoyed the game, and I learned a lot from the game. And for me, that's actually a lot of what I'm looking for in historical gaming. So for me, it hits the spot. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason that more people are like, oh yes, I'll play Undaunted Normandy instead of, I want to play a game about Italian torpedo riders.
Yeah, right. But and I mean, well, and here's another question. So let's say Undaunted North Africa came out first.
Right.
Do you think it would be as popular?
That's a great question. I mean, for somebody like me, I would be more drawn to it because I enjoy novelty in my themes, but I also play games all the time. And as a historian, by trade, I have a different set of priorities coming towards games than I think the vast majority of people do. I think that doing Undaunted Normandy, marketing-wise, was the obvious choice.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it kind of had to be. Like, I mean, I just don't think, if somebody picks up in the U.S., if they're not a war gamer, right?
Right.
Let's just, they're a whatever Omni game or whatever. They walk in a store and they pick up North Africa and they flip it around and say, "You're playing the Long Range Desert Group against Italians." Like, I don't know what the hell that means. Like,
Right.
that doesn't mean anything to anybody, right?
Yeah.
But everybody knows U.S. and Germany fighting in Western Europe. So
yeah. So what does that mean for the future of designing games, and particularly historical games, and pushing the boundaries of what themes we think will sell and opening up to more interesting stories and to more diverse stories? Like, how do we go from this is what sells to, this is what sells, and like having a bigger range? Like, do you think that doing something like releasing a follow-up to something like Undaunted Normandy is helping to push so that you can get more interesting games out now that the market trusts your system?
Yeah.
Do you think that you could have done By Stealth and Sea before you did Pavlov's House?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's probably a tougher one. Now, I will say, are you? I don't know if we talked about this. Were you tracking on the whole Marco Wargamer, who now Marco Omni Gamer, his comments about Undaunted and the reply that he got from?
Was this what he was saying about how people don't play war games like they used to, and we need to accept the new way of things, and that something like Undaunted Normandy is just pitched towards the new generation of people who want a war game? Is that about right?
Basically his words, and I'm paraphrasing here. He's basically like, this is the future of wargaming, and people playing, and essentially what he was talking about is like old style hex and counter games, like that's going away, that's done. Now, I don't agree with. Hey, it's great that he likes Undaunted. That's cool. I appreciate the compliment. I don't really agree that old style war games are going away, right? But here's what I'll say. Before I answer any of your questions, thankfully we don't have to choose, right? Because we live in this kind of a golden age of wargaming, right? So people might say like Avalon Hill, where they were selling tens of thousands of copies, was the golden age. And I don't really care to debate that. What I really care about is we can have both. We can have Undaunted Normandy, which sells a lot of copies and all kind of people can play it. And we can have By Stealth and Sea that a couple thousand people will own, and both can exist, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Now, hopefully, something like this would happen. People who never play war games buy Undaunted Normandy. They say, "Oh, this is cool. It's a deck-building war game." Somebody flips through and they read a couple of the scenario historical backgrounds, and it draws their interest. And they say, "Oh, that's just cool. I wonder if there's other games about this topic," or North Africa, right? And then they go to other war games, and then finally we have a person playing, super crunchy, crazy something, right? I mean, I'm kind of like that. Like, I've got 1754, which is one of the Birth of America games, right? So super light, French and Indian War. But I've also picked up Wilderness War. I'm looking at Wilderness Empire, like crunchier, war games that span the spectrum. And there's got to be other people just like that.
Yeah. I also wonder about things too. So I do believe that if a game is good and you can get it in front of enough people, it will make it. I do think there are some aesthetic aspects to it. So Pax Pamir, for example, second edition. That game is a beautiful example of history-made game,
Right.
But I don't think that's a topic that most people would have chosen. I think it emerges from the fact that Cole really loves that topic because it's who he is and what he studies. It comes from his heart, and it's beautiful. The production value is really bumped, and I look at a project like that, and I think, how many more kind of wonky historical periods can we make games out of? How do we make this interesting? How do we push this? And I do think that we're entering also a world where we can choose other themes. Like, look at Spirit Island, which is about chasing away colonial powers. You have Pax Pamir, which is about, balancing intruders from without. And I wonder, would Pax Pamir Second Edition be doing as well as it should, without something like Root?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Like, That would be an interesting question for Cole to say.
Yeah.
Where do you think PAX Premier's, the second edition PAX Premier, where its popularity came from, right? Because they just just launched the Kickstarter, right?
It's
like
a reprint.
Reprint of second edition, and it blew up, right? Like it was crazy the first day.
Yeah, I'm actually looking right now.
Yeah, I backed it because I don't have a copy of the first printing.
I backed the coins.
Oh yeah.
I wanted the metal coins. I normally don't bling my games out, but this time it was just time. Yeah, it was a $10,000 goal. It's at $318,491
for that
PAX Premier reprint, second printing.
Yeah, so look at the weight of the game and the theme of the game.
Yeah,
that's, you would never in a million years say, oh, that'll be a $300,000 Kickstarter.
No, and yet it is, and it really warms my heart that this is so, right? Because it gives me a lot of hope for other kind of interesting and thinky game themes to come to the fore. The other thing is, though, that it is, I guess, would you call it a Waro, which is something that we've talked about before? Kind of, it's not probably a war game proper. Yeah. It's a historical game.
I would call it first and foremost a historical game. And if somebody wanted to call it a Waro, I'd say, that's fine. But yeah, that's a pretty large, encompassing, genre, I would say.
But, it's not the sort of game that goes all the way back to like a hex encounter. What's interesting about Root doing so well is that it's kind of got its roots in the coin system. Its roots, unintentional joke. But I look at something like PAX Premier, and I'm really fascinated by its ability to do well. That's what I want to see. But I also wonder, are we going to be able to see war games on interesting topics capture people this way? And is it going to be something along the lines of what Marco Wargamer is saying, which is that war games need to change? Or are we going to see people kind of get hooked on the history and start moving back through the rich world of war games that already exists? Because that's what's happening to me. I wasn't a war gamer. I guess I can call myself a war gamer now. I play war games.
Oh yeah.
But for me, this was a journey of, I really like the history behind this game. Let me just kind of keep going. And then before I knew it, it was like a trap. Like here I am. Yeah. And I just went further down the rabbit hole until I did not want to climb back out of the rabbit hole anymore. And I wonder who else that will happen to, especially with the internet, with these sort of more accessible historical games, with more accessible war games. Like, I'm wondering if this is the new normal, or if it's actually a gateway that'll lead people over into the other side of gaming.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I also think that games like Watergate do the same thing, right? Like, have you played Watergate?
I have not, because it doesn't solo.
What's that?
It doesn't solo, no.
I know, I'm sorry. But I mean, it's a perfect, because it's a CDG, right? It's a historical game. So it is absolutely a gateway drug into all the awesomeness that is, all the war game CDG type games.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. Like, that would be a great question for Cole. It's like, what do you attribute to the success? I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? Like, the reason it does well is because it's a fantastic game.
Yeah.
Like, it can't have done that otherwise. But being a fantastic game by itself won't make it popular, right? Like, it has to have something going for it. So,
yeah, I'm excited about the future of historical gaming. I mean, you're doing really cool stuff that's, I think that actually in some ways Pavlov's House was a big deal for me as a game, because somebody recommended it to me just as a solo game. I didn't even know it was DVG until I looked it up. And it wasn't somebody who I normally thought would recommend a war game to me. And I thought about that, and I was just like, wow. I mean, in some ways, I think it's a break across the line from like war gamer to normal gamer. I don't know if there's such a thing as a normal gamer. First of all, none of us are normal. And also, like, the span of gaming, I mean, you're a gamer if you play Candy Crush, you're a gamer if you play Fire in the Lake,
Yeah, that's right.
But for me, I'm seeing, as somebody who reviews games, right, there's more crossover than I think there has been before. At the same time, a lot of war games that I think are wonderful have fallen off the People's Choice Solo Top 100 this year. So I'm kind of watching trends and really excited about what's going to happen and how the field's going to change, because I think I think that there will be newer and more interesting to a larger group of people war games coming out, and I'm wondering what it'll do to war games that already exist.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. You made me think of this when you talk about the top 100, like the top 100 solo games or whatever. So, you are the solo game community, right? Like I kind of have like my toe in the solo game community because of the war game designs, but I live in all the worlds. But you embody it. So, if I say, hey, what are the top 10 solo games? And I go to BGG and look it up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't those going to be games that are not solo designed games, but they are games that are super popular that have a solo option?
Sometimes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think that that's necessarily the defining factor. Let me actually look up the exact People's Choice Top 100.
Okay.
Because I have the spreadsheet sitting on my computer. I'm not nerdy. Okay, so the top 10 this year were Spirit Island made number 1 over Mage Knight, which broke my heart, to be totally real with you. I'm a Mage Knighter. Terraforming Mars is number 3. Aeon's End is number 4. That's also in my personal top 10. So Spirit Island, actually. Scythe was 5, followed by Gloomhaven. Arkham Horror, the card game, which I do think solo's better than it plays too. Robinson Crusoe. And then you have that Lord of the Rings LCG. And then Too Many Bones. So a lot of these are games that do play multiplayer, but I'm not totally convinced that I would prefer them multiplayer. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does, but you are a, yeah. I don't know how to say this, right? Like
I just come at games differently.
Big time solo player, right?
Yeah.
And so I wonder. It's interesting.
Yeah, so
I feel like what happens is you wind up getting this where you have people that are not really part of the core Solitaire world, who are more exposed to multiplayer games and who disproportionately support those over Solitaire specific designs.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the people who buy things, does it have a solo mode? I'll think about buying it. Does it have a solo mode? No, I'm not going to buy it. That's a much smaller subset of gamers.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I would actually say that, I mean, I do play multiplayer games. I have a game night. But I would also say that my buying tastes are different because I review games, I want to bring things into the house that I can both play and enjoy and put on my channel. And otherwise I would buy every game under the sun, and that would be a problem. It's already a problem. So, it's a self-limiting thing too. But I really wonder too if people who play these kind of heavier solo games. So the other thing that's really interesting is that the solo games that are at the top of the list are longer, heavier, more difficult. Not always, but there's a lot of them. And I would say that something like Nemo's War.
Yeah.
It's not a big jump from Nemo's War to War.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep.
That one was, I think, like number 15 this year. So, I mean, I think that players like me, solo players, who already like things like States of Siege games, who already will play something like Mage Knight or Spirit Island, which has a very high complexity level, I don't see it as a big hop over into war games. It's just a matter of pitching the theme that draws somebody in.
Yep. What about the aesthetic? And meaning, like, you could have the exact same game that has sort of a traditional war game aesthetic versus a not, I guess.
I got made fun of on Dice Tower for liking aggressively ugly games a couple weeks ago. But
that you were our hero on that episode, right?
But for me, like, first of all, I don't think war games are ugly. I think they're efficient.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with that. I think, they, to me, as somebody who likes historical documents, and I like things that look a little bit old and look a little bit, I don't know, like a serious map or something. I really dig that look, generally. So, I mean, to me, they aren't ugly at all. I do think that something like Pax Pamir 2nd Edition that has that gorgeous production value, it's definitely punching through. I think that having prettier components and having things look a little bit more slick does sell more games. Like, look at how much fun people make of Hollandspiel's parts. I talked about this with Harold yesterday. Like, you know, to me, it's efficient, and it doesn't bother me at all. The game works, and I'm really in it for the game. But do I think that if there was like a cloth map and like these more deluxe chits and linen finish cards and would it do better? Yeah, probably. Yeah. But I think that people like to buy the bling. But what interests me about that is that, I mean, okay, so you spend probably more time designing games than playing them for the most part, I would guess, because you have a huge schedule.
Yeah.
So when you buy a deluxe game, do you feel that you get the full value out of that game? Like, are you getting enough plays per dollar, I guess?
I try to never think about, like, am I going to play it?
Yeah.
Oh, so I've tried to buy less, but I don't worry about whether I'm going to play a game a lot when I buy it.
Right.
I almost always buy, my collection kind of sucks because it's not very versatile, right? And what I mean by that is, like, I don't have a really good assortment of games for different audiences. I have a lot of games for my specific family, right? So that I can play with my kids, and then I have a ton of historical games. And I bought those historical games mostly because of whatever their topic is. Right. So you and I talked about this, right? Like, I have Days of Ire and Knights of Fire. Will I play them a lot? No. Probably not. Do I really want them? Yes. Because how many games do I have on those topics? You know?
Yeah.
And so my calculus for board game plays to dollar, it's not something I think a lot about.
That's interesting. I think also because I review, so I have games coming in all the time, you have to be worth my shelf space to stay in my home. And it's just the way that it is. If I look at a game and I'm like, I don't really want to play it, it goes in the trade pile. Yeah. Like, you know, I look at Mage Knight and feel pangs of longing when I'm too busy to play it. It stays. But, you know, I actually, you know, because they were review copies, I just gave them on, like, you know, Days of Ire and Knights of Fire, because I knew that I wasn't going to keep playing them. So they left the house. And they have to. They just have to. I can't keep them. Yeah. And so, you know, I have to be really harsh about my cuts. Yeah. Honestly, if I gave it a 7 or less on Dice Tower, it's probably gone, unless it was like the Oniverse games, I keep the full set.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because I feel like as a solo gamer, like, you want the full set of Oniverse games. But for the most part, I have to kick things out the door quick. Yeah. So would you say that your home is not overwhelmed by games?
I don't have like a specific number, but I have my game shelf, and if it doesn't fit on there, I don't keep it. And so that's about 100 to 125 games.
That makes sense.
I will, if I start struggling to get on the shelf, I'll make sure I get rid of them at the next convention, or I usually just give them away. So I had a buddy of mine visiting who's a big war gamer, and so I took a whole box of games and just gave them to him. You know? Yeah.
The other thing I actually do is I have a local guy who has a game store, and so I just trade stuff to him for store credit at a pretty reduced rate, because I don't really feel like I should profit off of review copies, but it's an easy place to get rid of them. Yeah.
Well, I mean, plus if you're getting store credit and you wind up reviewing the game that you're getting from the store, you're not even profiting, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I try to get rid of things as efficiently as possible while being ethical. Yeah. You know, I'm not gonna take some deluxe thing that I know is worth $150 and try to sell it for $150. It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I guess. Though at the same time, you're also spending way more time doing the review than, like, you're like me. You'd ever want to break down what you're doing into, like, how much you're getting paid per hour.
No. Nope. Let's not think about that. Nope.
Designing games.
I'll be really glad with all my cents per hour. So you have any big plans for today other than preparing to do ArcGIS and hang out with the kids?
No, that's probably it. I did get in the mail, I just received yesterday a book that is written by a Ford observer that was at the Battle of Mortain on the hill that was surrounded. So I have a new juicy book to break into. It's an artillery forward observer.
That sounds fantastic.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to let you go do that because the more you research, the faster my games come out. But thank you so much for coming on. Anybody who's watching, feel free to leave us a comment below. We hope that you are all safe and healthy and hopefully not too stir crazy. And happy gaming.
Yep. Thanks for having me.